Failure is a disruption of social norms which leads to the transformation of creativity and expression. Crossing the Board is an experimental documentary that explores the experiences of trans and genderqueer people and how they interact and fail at society. As the editor for this project, I'm using a combination of two academic novels, Cutting Rhythms Intuitive Film Editing by Dr. Karen Perlman in connection to The Queer Art of Failure by Jay Hallerstone to establish the film's queer editing style produced by me, a queer film editor. The editing approach I will be using made it challenging to find excerpts to analyze. Therefore, I'm constructing my own test edit as a way to establish the editing style for our production. This concept connects to the on-screen draft created by Dr. Karen Perlman. I'm reimagining this concept and using two queer film documentaries and editing them together to establish the draft version of the editing style for our production. These two documentaries are A Plus Queer, which explores asexuality with the framework of seeking more positive representation, and Queer Time, which explores the disruption of the normative idea of a lifetime when it comes to being queer. The reason why I chose these two films in particular is because they both deal with queer concepts, identities, and the way the queer community often fail to adhere to normality. Together, I will be combining them to create a proof of concept edit for Crossing the Board. The editing style of Crossing the Board is established in connection to the ballad meter. The integration of ballad meter is in relation to Lewis Carroll's novel Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There. Ballad meter is often used to denote to the idea of perfection and having a right way to say and do things. Our production starts with our characters speaking to their queer experiences in the ballad meter to make them fit into the right way of being queer. The edit will allow them to speak to their experiences.
I was socialized one way, but now I'm living socially as what many people consider the opposite.
You guys have helped a lot with me figuring out a bunch of things about gender, about asexual identity.
However, as the film continues, they try and break away from this ballad meter. This is where the editor takes over to manipulate their experiences, where I will be cutting off, cutting in, and cutting down the cast experiences to make them fit into the ballad meter the film constructed, as well as manipulating their speech to say things that they didn't mean or say.
Being this imitation of
representation light.
We kind of have to do it ourselves.
Just things that you did wrong and how you can improve upon that today.
Who got married.
Cisgender heterosexual people can just decide to move forward.
And I guess that's kind of what I'd like to do, you know?
a heteronormative, cisnormative.
Following that example, you guys have helped a lot with me figuring out a bunch of things about
Typical
Imposed
Narrow path.
marriage thing.
I definitely feel more comfortable because it's this,
A heteronormative, cisnormative kind of institution.
but also because I've kind of found a place.
We come together as a
Institutional and
group.
The same ideas of future as everyone else.
This part, Act 2, will feature the most rhythmic and heavy editing as I, the editor, become the antagonist, trying to make the characters conform to the ballad meter put in place as a mirage of queer perfection. The characters then slowly break away from my manipulative editing
I now understand that I don't have to do that if I don't want to.
as they start to fail, speaking less and less to the ballad meter.
It was for show, it was institutional, it was something that was thrust upon us.
As the characters break away from the ballad meter, the characters start to fail. As a result, the editor fails as well.
It wasn't just me by myself trying to bottle everything up and holding it in. It was learning and changing along with other people.
This encapsulates Act 3 as the characters accept the failure and start representing their experiences without the manipulation of edit and speech.
Deciding to transition itself kind of takes you really outside of the normative.
The technical and creative strategies I used within this test edit were the manipulation of queer people's experiences to align with heteronormative ideals, to mold them into something completely different. The editing style I used doesn't hide the manipulation of speech. I wanted to use this idea to make it known to the audience that these stories being told are being manipulated and it feels weird and wrong. This connects to queer people's experiences in the real world, as they also have to manipulate their identities to fit into the established mold, which is one of the main concepts we are addressing in Crossing the Board. This proof of concept test edit has established that Crossing the Board's editing style connects to its overall themes of experimenting, being queer, and failure.